Yeah.
Web series that we just saw. And then if we could just go down the line and just say our name and what was our project and what was our role on that project. So we'll start with you.
Hi everyone, I'm Logan Vaughn, the writer and director of Benny and James.
Hi, I'm Jordan, the writer and director of Unlicensed and Unstoppable.
Hi, I'm Annabelle Payan, the co-writer of Les Malémans.
My name is Zoe Tremblay-Bianco, and I directed Les Malémans.
I'm Charlie Dinkin, and I co-directed Don't Overthink It.
Very cool. So, you know, the overall kind of theme of this block was, of course, dealing with mental health, and each one of your pieces really had a unique way of looking at that. So, we could just kind of go down the line project by project, but what was it about mental health that inspired you to make your specific pieces? And I want to also really touch on, I think everybody in all their pieces kind of had some sort of panic attack or kind of freeze moment, which I think many of us can relate to. And so kind of kind of like what inspired you to take on mental health in your piece, and also what inspired you to visually approach it in the way that you did? So we'll start with you.
Well, admittedly, the mental health was not the focus of making Benny and James. It really centered on a dream, but it's a dream a recurring dream that I had for, maybe a course of a year. But it's a dream that unlocks sort of a moment for for James, that he is in deep conflict with, to have this conversation with his partner, and to ultimately make a decision. But I find dreams to be quite visceral, and at least my dreams are quite visceral, and a connection at times to a deeper consciousness, a higher entity. And so he's tapped into something, but it becomes a sort of center and gateway to have a conversation that's challenging. So do I think he's moving through sort of something that at the center is about mental health? I think it's more about a state of being that he is trying to transcend in the most truthful way with his partner. In terms of the visual landscape of it, it was one way 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and then I lost my apartment to a fire, and it changed my point of view of just the world and how I saw everything. And so that in the moment of sort of deciding how we were going to approach Benny and James, everything kind of felt gray to me. So they're both in a place of wanting to transcend to the light. But in the moment that we meet them, everything sort of feels gray. And I also, wanted to experience and unlock the story with no stops. So that's how we came to do it as a oneer. And my incredible actors, Philip James Brannon and Calvin Leon Smith, are from the theater. I come from the theater, and so it was just a very sort of natural way to unfold the story with my DP. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, what was it? How had you envisioned it before?
Before, longer takes, but ultimately the camera would we would sort of block it, and move camera. But yeah, it was something that I decided I really wanted them to be able to flex and to do what they do beautifully, which is what I think we get to witness without stopping, And also, that is sort of life. We don't stop. We don't sort of reset and get to, you know, reset and reblock. We have to just keep moving forward.
Yeah, for Unlicensed and Unstoppable, this is my first year in filmmaking, and I was painting beforehand, and a lot of my work did cover like mental health, and especially in Black and brown communities, and just what that conversation looked like. And I think in that time, all the conversations I had, they felt so varied, and people who weren't even comfortable speaking about it, and then people who had such a different approach to how they dealt with their mental health. I think that played a huge part in why I needed this main character to talk to so many people, to take on different clients, because I think there isn't one way that mental health looks right or healthy. So I think that was super important to me, and yeah, wanting to like just put it out there, and also include some like comedy, you know, to it. I think it makes dealing with hard stuff a lot easier when you can laugh your way through it sometimes. So.
What I would say, my co-writer that is not here right now, but who the project, it's her own idea. She navigates with anxiety, and as I too now, I didn't know before we start writing, but I discover it later. But yeah, Melody, she was dealing with anxiety, sometimes panic attack, and she really wanted to write about this, but in a comic way, because for her, laughter is really important to accept your own condition. So it talks about anxiety, yes, but also I think what's important in the project is the relationship between Izzy and Simon, their brother and sister. They're stuck together. Their mother died 5 years ago, and since they live together, they never go out of the apartment. And Izzy, she's living with anxiety, and Simon has narcolepsy, so the illness that you always fall asleep. So they're really stuck together, and what we wanted to talk about was how Izzy could emancipate herself of this relationship and accept her anxiety, accept to live with her anxiety, and be in the social world, be with people. So
Yeah, and starting from that point, like the texts were so beautifully written, and I guess I tapped into that anxiety and that panic as well, but also I think what came through to me as well was the difficulty to kind of have a grasp on your grief and like moving through that. So I guess in my direction, kind of feeling like Izzy was so stuck in herself and had such a hard time kind of relating to the world around her. I kind of, with my DP, worked on really focusing on her in the shots, and there was this whole idea of like opening up. So that 4th episode, which is like the kind of in the middle of the series, is pretty much the one that's where she's in contact with her mother who passed, you know, and her grief kind of transforming her and letting herself being open. So I think that, you know, visually, I guess the opening of the shot and like the light as well, we kind of worked that way with my DP as well, to kind of start off really somber, and then and the last scene, not to give you a spoiler, but was very kind of lit up and such. So kind of it was written that way, so it was kind of like, oh, it was easy to tap into that and to kind of accompany her emancipation in that way.
Not so deep with Don't Overthink It. Tom Little is like an amazing stand-up comedian who's just incredibly overlooked in the UK and everywhere else, obviously, by definition. But we've seen his stand-up, and we wanted to develop something with him. He is an anxious person. I hope he wouldn't mind me saying that, and that is what he talks about. And so we really just wanted to find a way to like really show from his point of view as much as possible the like humor with which he navigates his anxiety. It was like a very neurodivergent set and group of people working together, so I guess we also tried to make that like as safe and comfortable as possible. But yeah, other than that, it was just about really trying to find the funniest moments and the funniest take on what that kind of anxiety is like. Because in the end, I guess in our show, he kind of does cause it all for himself. And I think he like weirdly finds that freeing to kind of take ownership over it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we were trying to just really keep it centered on like his perspective and his voice, and kind of making him larger than life in a way that I think he really needed someone like with a camera to do for him in the same way he's able to do in his stand-up. So I was pleased we could do that.
Kind of going back to Benny and James, there was something, how do I say this? It was interesting to hear you say that it started from your own dream, which I find very fascinating, because also the whole piece has such kind of a dream-like scape. Something that really stuck out to me, for example, were the chimes and kind of the return of the chimes, and I love the kind of semi-horror scene at the end when you see all the baby stuff in the back seat. Like, there was something about that was so evocative. How much time did you, or what kind of was the process for you in coming up with the imagery of the overall piece, or was it something that you explored with your actors on the day?
So I would say the first exploration of it came through the writing. So the script is also as sort of visual as you experience it. And I basically just wanted to write it without any kind of boundaries. And then with my DP, Robert Arnold, who is sublime, and we went to film school together, and he and I watched a lot of things endlessly, from In the Mood for Love to Sam Mendes's 1917. That is once we decided we were going to do it as a oneer. And so just creating the visual landscape, though, the thing that I wrote, the thing that I kept expressing in our conversations was that I just wanted it to always feel gentle. Nothing should feel hard. Because what they're experiencing is hard, and we are sort of voyeurs within it, that we move softly around it. And so that's kind of how we, explored from moment to moment how the camera would move. In terms of working with my actors, we rehearsed as we would a play. We rehearsed for a week. We did, full days, like 7-hour, 8-hour days. That's just so that we could establish history and ease. They've known each other a long time, and so we want to live within that truth. And then we had a full day of tech, of blocking camera. So it stayed pretty much in alignment in what Robert and I created, but first, is just sort of being at the table together, creating the history, creating their way of being with one another, and then the blocking came from there. But it came in it unfolded in steps, as opposed to, I don't think we would have arrived at the same body of work if we did it in one day, tried to do it all. It's not really possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I feel that it's a very textual, very textured piece in that you feel kind of the richness, and I feel like then when we hit that powerful moment, it really shines through.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, just kind of giving it the squaring away the time, because I think it sort of wants it.
Yeah.
That's how we figured it out.
For Unlicensed and Unstoppable, it's what was, I just, first of all, I love the premise, right? Because I feel like we all maybe have that moment where we're like, we could all be therapists. And we could all just sit there and listen to people tell us their problems. What made you specifically kind of want to tackle the issue of, not the issue, but kind of therapy, and coming from this place of your main character really struggling to face herself in that way?
Unfortunately, personal experience.
Did you set up your own therapy-like program?
I did not. Okay, I didn't go that far, but I did started my own therapy journey around or a few months before this idea came, and just seeing what it taught me about myself. And I think I quickly went to like my family and be like, you have to try this, like, oh my god, it's this new thing. And you know, then like seeing reactions, then you start to maybe like, if someone's not comfortable with it, you try to maybe like, how do I help them now with what I know, and try to, you know, and you just understand it's, again, therapy for a reason. You later come back around to, I don't know what I'm talking about still. So yeah, sorry, I forgot the question.
So you were inspired by your own.
Yeah, oh yeah. And I thought there was like, it was just funny to come back and be like, you really thought you could become a therapist to your friends and family. That's no training, no nothing, just vibes. So yeah. So that was, I was like, what if I like took away that like conscious part of myself and said if I did just really go for it, what would that look like? And just live in that dumpster fire of a vision. And then that's how I got that.
I also really loved the choice to kind of, when she has that kind of heart-to-heart moment with her mother. And I was curious kind of what was so important to you to make sure that, you know, whether it was that she connected to her family, but what was it in that moment that made you feel like, I should have mom here?
I think originally I wasn't gonna have like a piece like that. I feel like I personally try to handle a lot of things on my own, but I think just taking note of like what a lot of, especially Black media, it doesn't really depict really good family life. And so I knew that I wanted to, you know, be vulnerable even with my own relationship with my mom, and just count on, you know, those times that I've had with her where I could be vulnerable, and that was what I needed, even when I in my head was like, I got it, like it's fine. But yeah, just being vulnerable, and also that piece of like wanting to show what that is and show that in television and stuff.
Amazing. I'm gonna say the Carebreakers because my French is terrible. I'm gonna embarrass myself. But you know, you spoke earlier about kind of the brother-sister relationship. I think a lot of the relationships in your piece are so powerful. I love that kind of the brother is dealing with a young child, and the sister is very much dealing with older people. And kind of that, if you could speak to kind of the choice to kind of have this cross-generational element that you had in the piece that I think made it so interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think it was a bit unconscious for us. Yeah. Because we wanted the brother Simon to have like a quest related to their father. So he is the babysitter of his half brother Brandon. So yeah, that's why we went on that way, and that's why he's interacting with a child. I think for Izzy, I don't know, it was so unconscious. Yeah. Well, I think in community centers like this, there are people of all ages, and it was situated in Montreal, so people from all cultures too. It was important for us, so yeah. I don't know.
Well,
It's okay. If it's also unconscious, it's also, but I found that so beautiful. And then I think also to that, there was such a VHS tape quality to the whole, like it felt very much like a home movie, but in a elevated way, obviously. But it had kind of this very homey vibe to it. If you could speak to whether that was conscious or not, or what kind of went into how to represent the kind of anxiety that you spoke about earlier.
Thank you. I think that yeah, like the relationships are, you know, pretty much the focus in this story, where she has such a hard time creating some, so how that healing kind of comes through. What I could add about the figure of the older brother, I think for me, what I kind of picked up on in the reading of the scripts was also that he was placed in a situation where he had to take care of his younger sister at such a young age, and for me, I think that kind of became toxic and codependent, you know, where they kind of lost any consciousness about like how they're actually really hurting each other, you know, where they're trying to help each other. And for me, that relationship with like the kid that he's babysitting, who is his stepbrother without the family knowing, that's kind of like the fun side quest. But I guess there's something of a healing there for him too, to become like this figure who actually emancipates his other sibling, you know, whereas Easy, he kind of, without wanting to, I guess, because they've just grown up together and they've kind of cared for each other as best as they could, you know, because they were kids too, you know, they're at their own level of maturity, I guess. But yeah, so that's kind of I guess for me it's like a healing kind of quest for them too, and the homey feeling of the community center in itself, like all the characters are just so colorful and kind of really atypical, and I think that, you know, that was kind of what we wanted to bring out, and how they could be kind of create this kind of the fine line between, oh, they're kind of weird and they make me unsettled, and at the same time, like, we love to see them and like we feel directly attached, you know. So I think there's also like in the idea of the direction, kind of, yeah, having that home feeling, or that kind of wide audience as well, like, you know, there's some children as well in the series, and they brought such a nice feel to the set and to the whole piece, you know, and they're amazing. Like that Brandon kid, the young actor, was just spot on. Like, I would ask him like, okay, you're a dancer, like you gotta dance, and he was just like improvising the weirdest moves, and I was like, you're awesome, you know. So yeah, it was a nice.
It felt very free. I would say, watching it as well.
Yeah.
I have to ask about the dead mouse.
No.
That was such a precious moment, I guess. How did that idea come about? Like, what was the nexus of coming to the dead mouse?
I think the image of the dead mouse is kind of related to the image of, well, I will spoil something. Is it okay?
Yes, I would say. I'll say yes. Sorry.
At the end of the series, Ise has a mouse. It's like I don't know how to say it in English, but a supportive,
emotional support
emotional support animal. So I think that the dead mouse, that came before, would reflect to that, because the mouse she have at the end, it's a, I don't know, it helped her to like emancipate herself from her medicine, and to go out in the world. So yeah, I think that the mouse that is alive at the end. So there was like a parallel with these two mouse.
The incarnated mouse. Yes.
Yeah.
And then Charlie, for your piece, first of all, I wanted to, when you brought up the fact that you were working with this comedian, just talk about like that kind of partnership, what that was like, and how did you know him before this project, or did you work together on this?
we like met him once. We did a big batch of sketches, like 2-minute sketches for a like an online platform who actually produced this, called Pulped. They're great, look them up. So we'd made one sketch with him, and we'd seen him live, and we didn't know him at all other than that. But the bulk of our business is TV development. We develop comedy TV shows. So we just like did the development process with him without maybe necessarily that kind of like big broadcast interest to begin with. But I do hope something will come of it for him. But we just like loved his stand-up. He's just like a very gifted to stand up, and I think what's special about him is that he's so unique, and it's like in that way with his anxiety, he just like does stand up from a very vulnerable place. And I personally am just interested in seeing like new takes on stand up at this point. So we knew the shape of what the show could be in terms of our budget and the scope, and then we just really like worked with him to figure out what each episode was going to be about.
I love all the fantasy sequences. I feel like those are the moments that really pop. Some of them were, because some of them are in black and white, some of them necessarily aren't, like when he's confronted with those two guys. So what went into kind of, I'll ask two questions. What went into like the visual of like how are we gonna execute this? And also, were you tweaking while you were filming to add, you know, more jokes or decide to take on, you know, kind of, how improvisational was it?
Yeah, very improvisational. So we started with a script, but we had such a short amount of time to film everything. So each of those episodes was like less than a day, 2/3 of a day for the whole episode, and we just shot the whole series in a week. And so we always try and do like a clean take, and then we just really see what he can bring on, and other actors. And there are loads of comedians in this series. They're not really actors in that way, like most people are comics. And so yeah, very improvisational. And then I would say the theme of the dream sequences not matching is like vibes, man. I don't think we thought that through that carefully. It was like per episode, what will visually pop for us? What is the joke?
Yeah.
Does the joke work? Does the joke lead? And then yeah, there's like a way it could have been more unified, but we designed it that the whole thing can be watched. We actually really would prefer people watch the whole thing as 40 minutes that runs all the way through. So we also didn't want anything to be too samey in every episode, because it already is like a very non-traditionally structured 40-minute film. Not that that is the length of movie that exists, but like to make it so it isn't just like plodding along, we wanted a little more variety.
Very cool. For each of you, we can just go down the line. What was the biggest, it's like the rose and thorn, you know, what was the biggest challenge that you had working on this piece? And what are you most proud of when you watch the piece now that it's completed?
Do you want to start on the other thing?
I'll start it down here. I'll give you that.
Okay.
Charlie, I'll start with you.
Cool, thank you. Thank you for that. It was what's the best bit? What's the worst bit? That was the question.
Sure. I mean, I wouldn't say worst bit, but maybe the most frustrating bit when it was about putting it together.
I think it was like quite a mammoth thing to pull together. There was like a very big cast. Maybe I would try and shoot a web series like this with like a smaller cast and a more focus, so we could do more beautiful cinematography and get our actors to do better acting. Can you say that? More acting? The right amount of acting. Lots of administrative things were very difficult, but the entire thing was like a huge pleasure to make, and to make a project of that scope. Like, you don't always get to do it. It's just like the greatest thing in the world when you can make something. So it was just fun. It was nice.
I would say so. It's pretty much like my the first directing project, like at this kind of scale. That I come from theater and acting, so I think that was definitely the Rose, where I was just directing actors and like really into that exchange with them, you know, and trying to take as much time as I can in that, you know, in the kind of rapid what that takes to produce something like that, you know. So I guess the thorn would be, you know, also just like the huge kind of step of learning curve, like, but it was, I feel privileged to have kind of access that kind of way of working, but it was a lot of learning, yeah, for sure. That's what I would say.
I think for the writing, what was hard, similar to you, always a question of budget. So yeah, we always had to shrink our ideas or shrink the scenes. I think that was a tough part, maybe. And there is a lot of dialogues also in the project, and yeah, how to keep the comedy, the absurdity in the dialogue when you have to shrink sometimes the structure. I think that was maybe the hard thing in the writing. Yeah.
What was the good thing?
What? What was the good thing? But I think when I see the result, I love the characters. I love their humanity. How we have it, we receive it so directly. Yeah, I think that's what I'm so proud of.
Oh.
Yeah.
The biggest challenge, definitely production. First project, didn't have any like production company or anything, or So it was just like a lot of us doing this for the first time and just figuring it out. So that was definitely the challenge, but I think the rose is on the other side of that. You build that bond with people, and that's like so special to have like actors and actresses and like everyone on the team really like, you know, grow together, and you see everyone improve. And what we're doing now is just so like leaps beyond what we did then. So yeah, I'm proud of the connections and to tell a story regardless of, you know, what it took to get there.
I would probably just say it being a oneer, because everyone has to be moving in alignment and synergy. So that's the crane operator to the focus puller to the camera operator, to, you know, my beautiful actors. We all have to be moving in sync. And so it was a very special morning at 4 a.m. that we were all very deeply, very spiritually in alignment, because it actually cannot work without that, with all of us not being in step with one another. So the rose of that would be that we found our alignment, you know. That's the sweet, beautiful payoff to it. Yeah.
How much time do we have? Great. So, if we could all just go down the line, so just, you know, kind of what's, if anything's next that we should keep an eye on, and where we can follow the project, follow the major creators of the project, basically where we can find more.
Well, you can find us at Benny and James Film on Instagram, and we're in festival. We've had a beautiful festival run so far. We were at Cannes, we were at Holly Shorts, and we have quite a few coming up, which will be exciting. And other than that, we are making theater.
Instagram at Jordan Does Film, Jordan_Does Film, sorry. So this one's hopefully gonna have like a good festival run as well. And right now we're in pre-production for a upcoming short film that will happen in April. Tomas Is Not a Clown. That's very exciting, has its own exciting premise, but yes, that Instagram is where I post a lot of the updates.
We also have an Instagram.
Yeah, we Les Malémans, ouais.
And we're really at the beginning of this journey. It's the first festival where we do with this project, so we're really happy to be here.
Yeah.
We hope there is going to be other opportunities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're applying now, so we'll see in the next months. Yeah.
Yeah, I think personally we kind of have other practices than film as well, so
writing, acting
too.
Yeah.
So but mainly focusing on those other projects, and then eventually probably creating more film.
We're called Daddy's Super Yacht Productions, and you can find our website if you Google that. Please look at our other work.
All right, well, round of applause.